Back in 2007, I was a 17-year-old high school senior trying to figure out what adulthood was going to look like. Like most kids my age, I was worried about graduation, figuring out whether I wanted college or work, and wondering how I was ever supposed to afford a car that didn't sound like it was falling apart every time I started it. Then life threw me a curveball. A few days after my girlfriend and I broke up, she told me she was pregnant. For a lot of people, hearing that at 17 would probably feel like the end of the world. I remember people assuming I must have been terrified or completely overwhelmed. The truth was almost the opposite. I was excited. That probably sounds strange, especially looking back now, but I'd always known I wanted to be a dad someday. Maybe not quite that soon, but I genuinely loved the idea of having kids. Once the initial shock wore off, my focus shifted almost immediately to one thing: being there for my child. Even though my ex and I had already ended our relationship, I never considered walking away from my responsibilities. In my mind, the relationship and the baby were two separate issues. We weren't getting back together, but I fully intended to help raise my daughter. At least that's what I believed at the time. As it turned out later, the baby wasn't actually mine, but that's an entirely different story for another day. Back then, though, everyone at school knew what was going on. News traveled fast in a small town, and our high school wasn't exactly known for keeping secrets. I grew up in rural West Virginia, where everyone seemed to know everybody else's business before breakfast. People had opinions about everything, especially when it came to relationships, especially when religion got involved. One afternoon, our regular history teacher was absent. Instead, we had one of the substitute teachers who floated around the school enough that everyone recognized her. She wasn't mean exactly, but she definitely had a reputation. Let's call her Miss Thumper. Not because that was anything close to her real name. It was because she quoted the Bible every chance she got. No matter what the topic was, she somehow found a verse that applied. Forgot your homework? Bible verse. Talking too much? Bible verse. Someone sneezed? Probably a Bible verse for that too. She walked into class carrying herself like she wasn't just filling in for another teacher, but personally responsible for correcting every teenager's moral compass before the final bell rang. After taking attendance, she divided the class into small groups for an assignment from the lesson plan our regular teacher had left behind. It wasn't difficult. Read a section, answer a few questions, discuss a couple of historical events. The kind of assignment that most groups finished with 20 minutes left in class. Our group worked surprisingly fast. Within 15 minutes, we had everything finished and checked over. Since Miss Thumper had already told everyone that quiet conversation was okay after the work was complete, we started chatting while waiting for class to end. There were 5 or 6 of us gathered around our desks. One of my closest friends sat beside me. A few girls from class joined the conversation. Someone asked how everything was going with the pregnancy. That naturally led to questions about baby names, doctor appointments, and whether I was nervous. I answered honestly, "I think I'm actually looking forward to it." They laughed. One girl said, "Seriously?" "Yeah," I replied. "I've always wanted kids." The conversation stayed lighthearted. People teased me about becoming the first dad in our graduating class. Someone joked that I'd better get used to never sleeping again. We laughed about diapers, midnight feedings, and all the things none of us really understood yet. What none of us realized was that Miss Thumper could hear every word. Our desks happened to be fairly close to hers. At first, she simply listened while pretending to organize papers. Then she looked over and smiled. I couldn't help overhearing. I shrugged politely. "No problem." She asked how far along the pregnancy was. I answered. She asked if we knew whether it was a boy or a girl yet. I explained that we thought it was going to be a girl. Everything still felt like harmless small talk. Then the conversation took a sharp turn. She looked directly at me and asked, "So when's the wedding?" For a second, I thought she was joking. I chuckled awkwardly. "There isn't going to be one." Her smile disappeared. "What do you mean?" "My girlfriend and I already broke up." "But you're having a baby together." "That's true." "So you're getting married?" I shook my head. "No, we're going to co-parent, but we're not getting back together." I wasn't angry. I wasn't embarrassed. I was simply stating a fact. From my perspective, forcing 2 people into a marriage they didn't want wasn't going to help anyone, especially not a child. That was how I'd been raised. My parents always believed that kids deserve parents who respected each other, even if they didn't live under the same roof. Staying in a loveless relationship, for the children, usually just meant everyone ended up miserable. I tried explaining that as calmly as I could. "We don't work as a couple anymore," I said. "That hasn't changed just because she's pregnant. I'll be there for my kid, but we're not getting married."
The other students in the group nodded. To us, that sounded perfectly reasonable. To Miss Thumper, not so much.
The moment I explained that my ex and I weren't getting back together, I could tell Miss Thumper wasn't satisfied with my answer. She folded her arms and stared at me for a second, like she was waiting for me to realize I'd made some terrible mistake. Instead, I simply looked back at her. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I wasn't looking for an argument. I honestly thought the conversation was over. It wasn't. She took a step closer to our group and said, "Well, that's not the right thing to do." The chatter around our table stopped immediately. Everyone looked from her to me and back again. I forced a polite smile. "I appreciate your concern," I said, "but we've already made our decision." She shook her head. "No, you haven't made the right decision." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" "A child deserves parents who are married." I took a slow breath before answering. "I agree, a child deserves parents who love and support them. That doesn't mean the parents have to be married." She frowned. "That's not what the Bible teaches." There it was. The conversation had officially gone from awkward to uncomfortable. I grew up in rural West Virginia, where church was an important part of life for a lot of families. I respected that. Many of my friends attended church every Sunday, and several members of my own family did too. But I'd also been raised to believe that faith was personal. It wasn't something you forced onto someone else, especially not in the middle of a public school classroom. I kept my voice calm. "I understand that's your belief. It should be yours too," she replied. The room grew noticeably quieter. Even students at other tables had started paying attention. Nobody was pretending to work anymore. Everyone could tell something unusual was happening. I shifted in my chair. "I don't think marrying someone when the relationship is already over would help anybody. It would be the honorable thing. I can still be an honorable father without marrying someone I don't love." She immediately responded, "No, you can't." That caught me off guard. I had expected disagreement. I hadn't expected someone to tell me I was incapable of being a good father because I wasn't planning a wedding. I tried once more to end the discussion. "I'll be there for my child. That's what matters." She ignored that completely. Instead, she launched into what felt less like a conversation and more like a sermon. She quoted scripture. She talked about family values. She spoke about commitment, responsibility, and doing what God expected. Every point eventually circled back to the same conclusion. You need to marry her. The more she talked, the less I responded. There wasn't any point. Nothing I said mattered because she had already decided I was wrong. I wasn't interested in debating religion. I wasn't interested in defending my personal life in front of half the class. I simply wanted the conversation to end. After another minute, I turned back toward my group. "So, where were we?" One of the girls tried changing the subject by asking about graduation. Another asked whether I'd picked out any baby names. We all made a genuine effort to move on. Miss Thumper wasn't willing to let it go. She interrupted us again. "You shouldn't ignore advice when it's being offered." I didn't answer. She continued talking. "You'll regret this decision." Still nothing from me. "You have a responsibility before God." I stared at the worksheet lying on my desk. At this point, I wasn't avoiding eye contact because I felt guilty. I was avoiding it because I knew if I argued, things would only get worse. Thankfully, my best friend had apparently reached the same conclusion. He leaned forward and spoke before I could. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "I think he's answered your question." She looked at him. "He doesn't understand what's at stake." My friend stayed remarkably calm. "Maybe, but it's still his life." She frowned harder. "I'm trying to help." "I get that," he replied, "but he's told you how he feels. I think you should let it go." That should have been the end of it. Instead, it seemed to make her even angrier. Her cheeks turned bright red. She looked around at everyone sitting in our group. "So this is what we're doing now?" Nobody answered. She pointed toward different desks around the classroom. "Everybody move." For a second, none of us understood. I said move. Students hurriedly grabbed their notebooks and backpacks. She split every group apart, scattering us across the room so nobody was sitting beside their friends anymore. The room fell silent except for the scraping of desks across the floor. Once everyone was separated, she marched to the television cart in the front corner of the classroom. Back then, every classroom seemed to have one of those bulky tube TVs strapped to a rolling metal cart. She wheeled it into position, connected the cables, and inserted an educational DVD that our regular teacher had apparently left as a backup activity. Without looking at anyone, she announced, "Since some people can't stay focused, we'll spend the rest of class watching this." She pressed the power button. The television flickered to life. Then she turned toward the class one final time. "And nobody speaks." She emphasized every word. "If I hear anyone talking, there will be consequences." She walked back to her desk and sat down with her arms crossed. The classroom was completely silent, at least on the surface. Inside my head, though, I was replaying the last 10 minutes. I wasn't furious. Mostly I felt embarrassed. Not because of my decisions, because a substitute teacher had decided my personal life was appropriate material for a lecture in front of my classmates. She hadn't asked whether I wanted advice. She hadn't spoken to me privately. She had publicly criticized my choices, my future, and even what kind of father she assumed I'd become. I glanced down at the backpack resting beside my desk. Inside was something I carried almost every day that year, my laptop, and tucked into its case was another gadget I was irrationally proud of, a Dell Axum Pocket PC. A few days earlier, I discovered that it could do something surprisingly entertaining. It had an infrared transmitter. Better yet, it had software that allowed it to learn and mimic the signals from almost any remote control. A regular history teacher had actually laughed when I demonstrated it for her earlier that week. She thought it was one of the coolest nerd tricks she'd ever seen. Miss Thumper, however, had absolutely no idea it existed. As I looked from the tiny pocket PC to the television across the room, an idea slowly formed in my mind. If she wanted to turn the rest of class into a punishment, maybe the television was about to develop the strangest technical problems it had ever experienced.
As Miss Thumper settled into her chair, the classroom fell into complete silence. The educational video had barely started. The narrator droned on about historical events while grainy footage filled the screen. Normally, everyone would have zoned out and waited for the bell to ring. I had other ideas. Very carefully, I reached into my backpack and pulled out my Dell Axum Pocket PC. Back then, it was one of my favorite gadgets. Most people had never even seen one before, and I loved tinkering with electronics. A few days earlier, I discovered one of its coolest features. It had an infrared transmitter. With the right software, it could learn commands from almost any remote control. I had actually shown our regular history teacher how it worked earlier that week. She thought it was hilarious that I could turn a handheld computer into a universal remote. Miss Thumper, however, had no clue. Keeping the Pocket PC hidden beneath my desk, I opened the remote control app and pointed it toward the television. Then, I pressed one button. The TV instantly shut off. The classroom went quiet. Well, quieter. Miss Thumper frowned. She looked up from the papers on her desk and stared at the now black screen. Huh. She stood, walked to the television, and pressed the power button. The screen came back to life. She nodded once, apparently satisfied, then walked all the way back to her desk. She had barely sat down before... Click. The television turned off again. This time, she looked genuinely confused. She got up a second time, walked across the room, pressed the power button. The TV came back on. She glanced around the room. Nobody moved. Nobody laughed. Every student was doing an Oscar-worthy job of looking completely innocent. She returned to her chair. I counted silently. 1, 2, 3. Click. Off again. Now she was irritated. She stood up much faster this time and marched toward the television. As she reached for the power button, I hit mine at exactly the right moment. The TV turned on. Without realizing it, she immediately pressed the button herself, which turned it off. She paused, stared at the screen, looked down at the button, pressed it again. The TV came back on. She slowly pulled her hand away as though she didn't trust the machine anymore. The second she turned around, click. Off. Several students lowered their heads to hide their smiles. My friend was biting his lips so hard I thought he might actually burst out laughing. I kept my face completely straight. Every time she thought she'd solved the problem, the television developed another mysterious issue. Sometimes I'd wait until she reached her desk. Sometimes I'd wait until she sat down. Once I let nearly a full minute pass just so she'd think everything was finally working again. Then, click. Black screen. She muttered something under her breath that I couldn't quite make out. At one point, she unplugged the power cord, checked the outlet, plugged everything back in. The TV worked perfectly. Until I turned it off again. By now, the entire class had figured out that something strange was happening. Nobody knew exactly what, but everyone seemed to sense that the universe had decided to humble the substitute teacher. She examined the remote. She changed the batteries. She checked the DVD player. She even slapped the side of the television lightly, like people used to do with old electronics. Nothing helped. Because of course, the television wasn't broken. It was doing exactly what I was telling it to do. After nearly 15 minutes of this bizarre battle, Miss Thumper finally threw up her hands. I guess the television's broken. She sighed dramatically. Fine. She ejected the DVD, unplugged the cart, and rolled it back toward the wall. Since she clearly hadn't prepared any backup lesson of her own, she turned toward the class and said, "Just work quietly on whatever you want until the bell rings." That was exactly what we'd wanted in the first place. The room immediately relaxed. People opened homework from other classes. Some quietly read books. Others finished assignments. nobody bothered the substitute. And interestingly enough, she didn't bother anyone else either. The rest of the period passed peacefully. When the final bell rang, I packed up my things and left with everyone else. Outside the classroom, my friend caught up with me. "You had something to do with that TV, didn't you?" I grinned. "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about." He laughed. "Sure you don't." Neither of us said another word about it. The next morning, though, I had one more thing to do. I found our regular history teacher before class started. She greeted me with a smile. "I heard the TV stopped working yesterday." About that. I figured honesty was the best policy. I explained everything. I told her about the conversation with the substitute. How she had publicly lectured me about my personal life. How my friend had tried to end the discussion. How she'd split everyone up and turned on the TV. Then I admitted what I'd done with the pocket PC. For a second, she just stared at me. Then she started laughing. Not a little chuckle. A full laugh. When she finally caught her breath, she shook her head. "I knew showing me that remote app was going to get you into trouble someday. I just didn't want you thinking the TV was actually broken." "I appreciate that," she said. She also reminded me that, funny or not, I had still disrupted class. Fair enough. She assigned me 3 days of lunch detention. Honestly, that seemed completely reasonable. I wasn't angry. In fact, I kind of enjoyed lunch detention. It was quiet. I could catch up on homework. Sometimes I even got extra reading done. Looking back now, I know there were probably more mature ways I could have handled this situation. But I was 17. A substitute teacher had publicly criticized my personal choices, tried to use her religious beliefs to pressure me into making life-changing decisions, and refused to let the conversation end when I politely disagreed. I never yelled at her. I never insulted her. I never argued. Instead, I let technology convince her that an old classroom television had suddenly developed the most confusing electrical problem imaginable. To this day, I still smile when I think about how determined she was to fix a television that had never actually been broken in the first place.